Hello and welcome back to Hindustan Astrology. I'm Katya and I have back with me Dr. Santhip Kanholy. Welcome back, Santhip.
Namaste, Katya.
Namaste. So today I'm going to do a presentation on something that is very personal, and I think that this can help a lot of people because there is a lot more diagnosis of this disease today. And May is the month for Ehlers Danlos awareness. So this is a genetic syndrome for the most part, and it includes different kinds of hypermobility and connective tissue disorders. And I've prepared a presentation to show you what it is, how it's diagnosed, how to recognize it, and then also how it's presented in my body. Because I think when you see a pattern in a real person instead of just a textbook example, you'll see how it's very different for everybody and how it can get unrecognized for a long time. So basically, my generation of people did not grow up with this awareness, and it wasn't really, known until about 20 years ago or so. But it explains a lot for a lot of people that have been wondering, what the heck is wrong with me? It explains so much. And I'm in a support group for it. And, you just can't believe the stories from these people. It's just astounding. There's about 40,000 people in the group. And every day people come in with variations upon variations. And it's just mind-blowing. So of course, how does my mind work? Well, gee, I wonder how that presents in an astrology chart. And so I started looking around for people that had famous, celebrities that had charts that I could use. And because it is a recent, recently discovered disorder, most people that have been diagnosed are in their 30s and 40s. And because of the Federal Protection Act, we cannot get into the birth chart to look at a birth time. So all of these new celebrities, most of them we don't have a birth time for, but for the older celebrities, we do. And so in my research, I discovered that there's a celebrity who never got an official diagnosis, but his doctor wrote a book about it after he passed, adding everything up and looking at his mother as well, because it's inherited. And that's Elvis Presley. So we're going to take a look at him, and then we're going to take a look at Daniel Browning Smith, who is the #1 contortionist in the Guinness Book of World Records. And so what you'll see with both of these people is that they are both very bendy. Our mascot is the zebra. And so that's why I've got my zebra dress on and the zebra support picture behind me. And we'll discuss that in a minute why. But I wanted Santhip here because, when I'm looking at, and analyzing all of this research, I see things that just pop out at me that are obvious, but I know that there are a lot of things there, hidden things that aren't obvious. And so I think Santhip will be able to ascertain some of those things. So without further ado, let me go ahead and do a screen share. So May is Ehlers Danlos Syndrome Awareness Month. And so this presentation is on how to see it in Jyotish astrology. Okay, why the zebra? When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. This phrase is told to medical students throughout their training. In medicine, the term zebra is used to reference a rare disease or condition. Doctors are taught to assume that the simplest explanation is usually the best, so as not to go around diagnosing patients with all sorts of exotic illnesses that are highly unlikely. Common diseases are what doctors should expect to encounter. But many doctors seem to forget that zebras do exist, and so getting a diagnosis and getting treatment can be more difficult for sufferers of rare diseases. Ehlers Danlos syndrome is considered a rare disease, and so EDS sufferers are medical zebras. So that's our mascot. Okay. So what is this? The Ehlers Danlos syndromes, or EDS, as I shall refer to it from here to on forward, are a group of hereditary disorders of connective tissue that are varied in the ways they affect the body and in their genetic causes. The underlying concern is the abnormal structure or function of collagen and certain allied connective tissue proteins. They generally are characterized by joint hypermobility, which are joints that move further than normal range, joint instability, which is called subluxation, which is a partial separation of the articulating surfaces of a joint, and dislocations, which is a full separation of the surfaces of a joint, scoliosis and other joint deformities, skin hyperextensibility, skin that can be stretched further than normal, and abnormal scarring, and other structural weaknesses such as hernias and organ prolapse through the pelvic floor. In the rarer types of EDS, there is also weakness of specific tissues that can lead, for example, to major gum and dental disease, eye disease, cardiac valve and aortic root disorders, and life-threatening abdominal organ, tissue, uterine, or blood vessel rupture. Diagnostic criteria for EDS. The Ehlers-Danlos syndromes are currently classified into 13 subtypes. In all but the hypermobile subtype, which is called HEADS, genetics variants have been identified as the cause for the disorder and are part of the diagnostic criteria. Since the publication of the 2017 criteria for EDS, a couple of other genes have been identified describing additional new types. In particular, these include AEBPI-related EDS and a COLIA1A2 gene variant causing overlap between EDS and osteogenesis imperfecta. Each EDS type has a set of clinical criteria that help guide diagnosis. A patient's physical signs and symptoms can be matched up to the major and minor criteria to identify the type that is the most complete fit. That said, there can be substantial overlap between the EDS types. Sometimes a provisional clinical diagnosis of an EDS type is made. This can occur when a person meets a minimal clinical requirement, but has no access to molecular confirmation, or whose genetic testing shows one or more gene variants of uncertain significance. In other words, they haven't cataloged everything yet. These individuals should be followed clinically, and alternative diagnoses and expanded molecular testing, skin histology, which is microscope examination of a skin biopsy, and testing of possibly affected family members should be considered. Please remember that an individual's experience with EDS is their own and may not necessarily be the same as another person's experience. Diagnostic criteria are meant solely to distinguish an EDS from other hereditary disorders of connective tissue. And there are many more symptoms for each EDS than there are in the diagnostic criteria. What are the signs and symptoms of EDS? Pain and fatigue are almost universal in the EDS syndromes. Clinical manifestations of an EDS are typically joint and skin related and may include joints, joint pain, which is called arthralgia, and deformity, muscle pain, myalgia, and nerve pain, neuralgia. Loose, unstable joints, which are prone to frequent dislocations and or subluxations and injury, muscle tension and weakness, weakness of the voice box and larynx, hernias, pelvic floor weakness and prolapses of the rectum, bladder or vaginal wall and uterus, and nerve disorders, neuropathy from cord and nerve entrapment or sensory nerve damage. Skin, soft velvety-like skin, variable skin hyperextensibility, fragile skin that tears or bruises easily. Bruising may be severe, including clots under the skin, a hematoma. severe scarring, slow and poor wound healing, development of molluscoid pseudotumors, fleshy lesions associated with scars over pressure areas, and comorbidity. So comorbidity means that, more than one disease wants to come to the party. It's like you get one and they all jump on, related things. So the less common comorbidities are arterial, intestinal, uterine fragility or rupture, usually associated with the vascular type of EDS, which is called VEDS. Scoliosis at birth and scleral fragility associated with the kyphoscoliotic type, KEDS. Congenital hip dislocations, poor muscle tone and severe gum disease, and the other comorbidities. Several disorders are associated with EDS, and in particular, the hypermobile variant. Among the most common of these are upper and lower gastrointestinal tract complications, such as swallow difficulties and sluggish stomach and large bowel, causing nausea, vomiting, acid reflux, bloating, pain, and absorption and food intolerance concerns, autonomic disturbances of heart rate and blood pressure, bowel and bladder function and temperature regulation, anxiety, depression, and phobias, and organ systemic inflammation related to mast cell activation. So basically, because your collagen or your connective tissue is the glue that holds your body together, when it's loose, your muscles have to work harder to hold you together. And because your muscles are working harder, it causes inflammation. That causes pain. And then that causes a host of other problems. So heart issues, like my mother had this, we're 99.9% certain that she had it. She's in that category like Elvis of people that were too old to get diagnosed, but she followed the criteria and she had that. So, she died of a heart attack. What causes EDS? Connective tissue is everywhere in the body, and it is the glue that holds us together. It provides support and structure to other tissues and organs, including bone, ligaments, tendons, blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, the tissue that holds the gastrointestinal tract in place, etc. There are many proteins in connective tissue. One of the key proteins is collagen. In the Ehlers Danlos syndromes, there are faults in the genes that determine how the body makes collagen, and or in some subtypes, other proteins that work alongside collagen. This leads to the connective tissue becoming weaker. Different tissues and organs can be affected in diverse ways, depending on the genetic fault. This explains why there are several subtypes of EDS. The genetic basis for hypermobile EDS is still unknown. So, and HEDS diagnosis rests on the criteria and what your doctor finds during your examination. So, how dislocated are your joints and how stretchy is your skin. They do something called the Bright's test, where they will bend your finger back to see how stretchy it is. They do things like that for HEDS when they can't do the genetic testing. So these are the 13 subtypes. So I'm not going to go through every single one because it's very involved, y'all. So if you are interested and you want to learn more, you just go down to the Ehlers Danlos website and click on the EDS types, and it'll has the criteria for each one. So the one that I think that I probably have, I'm pretty sure that I have HEDS, and the hypermobile, and I'm pretty sure that I have the vascular, because out of all of these types, the only one that has uterine rupture in the 3rd trimester is vascular. And that happened to me with my daughter. And that's also what Elvis had and his mother, most likely. And the life expectancy for VEDS is around 51 or 52. And that's how old I am. So, there are people in my group that are in their late 50s and are like, nope, I beat it. I'm not going to go under that, You have to have a really strong get her done attitude with this. You cannot sit back and wallow in despair, or you are going to turn into a pile of glue. You know, that's the thing with this. You know, there's so many people in the group that are just like, they don't know what to do, you know. And when you realize that, you know, you do have control, you can take control of this, you can manage it, then the positive mindset helps you to get up each day, you know. Because some people, I can't, you know, they're so bad off, their body is so bad off that, you know, just getting up every day is difficult. A lot of people are on disability that are extreme cases, and a lot of people are in wheelchairs or have a cane. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but there are days when I kind of wish I had a cane if I'm doing a lot of walking and I've worn the wrong shoes. So, you know, you know me, I love my 4-inch heels, but I can't do that for extended periods of time. You know, I have to be very mindful of my feet now. So we're going to take a look at how this is presented in my body, because you're going to flip out. You're going to be like, oh my God, how did your doctors not catch this? You know, seriously, you know, I've been wondering, like, so there are different, I'm going to go from the top down, from the epidermis all the way to the cognitive. Okay. So on the outside, these are all the symptoms that I've had. Very soft, velvety, and loose skin. And where you can really see it on me is my elbow, like right here. This is the kind of loose skin we're talking about. Okay. Thin skin that bruises easily. I have a bruise right here. I have no idea how I got that. That just seemed to appear overnight. I probably ran into something by accident, and it didn't hurt enough at the time for me to remember, you know, like running into a door or something, wind up with a bruise. Sensitive skin, prone to any skin infection, chiggers, sun poisoning, sunburn. When I was 16, I used to do the tanning beds all the time, and I got sun poisoning from it. It is the worst itch that it's like an itch you can't scratch, and it's worse at night. Oh my God. And if I go out in our forest, like now, like in the summer, there are these microscopic spiders called chiggers, and they live in the tall grass, and they jump on your clothing. Of course, you can't see them, but you wind up with a rash, you know, where you bend, you know, back of your knees, your groin, your stomach. I can't go in the forest in the summer because I will get whatever on my skin and it's all over. Sunburn, I will burn at first, but then I'll tan. And that's just that Mediterranean, you know, Native American heritage. Like I'll go from, you know, light to dark pretty fast, but I'll burn. Thinning hair, and that's also as a result of surgeries as well. Cafe au lait, birthmark, moles, and freckles. So that's one thing I just learned from a friend of mine who has been teaching me a lot about this. And cafe au lait birthmarks are like a big freckle, and it has an abstract shape. It's not like a freckle that has like a perfect circle. And my daughter was born with this on her face, and it was like the ancestors saying, you know, we're going to put this where you can't miss it because she's the generation that is finally going to benefit from knowing about this, you know. And mine is on my left hip, and it looks like the state of California turned sideways. And then I have like a big mole behind my ear. I've got freckles all over my bodies and mold. I mean, that's very common with the skin. Nails that split down the middle. One of my big toe, my big toe on my right, it just, whatever I do, it just always splits. It always splits, you know. And I've been taking collagen, which does not help your joints, but it does help the hair and the nails. So collagen definitely is something that can help you to combat this, but it's not going to stop the hypermobility. It's just going to, you know, replenish you. looking younger than your actual age. And that's something in the group, all the women, I mean, the men too, you know, we're all like, yeah, we look younger, you know, and a lot of the women are very beautiful. That seems to be something that goes with the collagen thing, you know. Stretch marks at the age of 16 from weight loss. When I was 16, I was anorexic. I lost 50 pounds in 3 months and got stretch marks on my hips like I had had a baby. Yeah. So now we go to dental. Thin enamel, lots of cavities as a child. Yet when I was 5, I had 6 cavities, and my grandma would not let me have candy anymore, and I was just devastated. TMJ, jaw dislocation and grinding teeth at night. I have to wear a teeth guard, and you know, like it almost starts like a spiral up here from the dental down to the muscular skeletal. You know, like it goes here, then it goes down, down, down. So from here are then receding gum lines. That's something that it's not that's with gingivitis too, but gingivitis can be cured. You know, this is something that can't be cured. It's like you've always, since you were little, had receding gum lines, you know. Okay, then we go to muscular skeletal. Chronic pain and fatigue from inflammation. I mean, it's just constant, you know, different levels on different days. My left shoulder is loose and subluxes quite a bit. It's never completely dislocated, although I can push them down really far, although you shouldn't, you know, like try to show people or be a part, you know, show a party trick or whatever. It's very bad. And I have a pinched nerve in this shoulder that goes down my left arm and up the left side of my neck. And a lot of times I have to wear my copper band sleeves or arms. I'm feeling better today, so I was able to take them off. I try not to wear them every day because it's not good for my skin. But on days that the muscles around my elbows are hurting, I just have to wear them. It feels so much better when I wear them. My right shoulder is the same, not as bad. Joint pain, I was officially diagnosed with degenerative arthritis of the hips. It's where the right hip meets the spine. Diagnosed by Dr. Musa in 2015. So, you know, they didn't know about the EDS, so they just said, oh, it's arthritis, you know, and that happens a lot. We get misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia or arthritis or whatever, and it's not. Hyperextended wrists and fingers that pop, and it's true. I mean, I noticed when I was a teenager, I was like, what is the matter with my wrists? You know, like, and my fingers will bend and pop. Hyperextended knees, kind of medium, some dislocation of my kneecaps that will happen. If I turn over in bed the wrong way and I turn my leg the wrong way, my kneecap will start to slide off. Twisted ankle on the left foot. I've done this a couple times. I'll just be walking and my ankle just gives out, you know, and then all that pressure goes down onto my ankle, and let me tell you, it is very painful. I have 4 broken toes. The outer 2 toes on each foot are broken. And there's no, you know, you cannot fix a broken toe. It's just broken, you know. And you know it's broken when it turns all purple and green and blue and stuff. That's the marrow coming out of your toe. That's how you know it's broken. It must have those colors. I have plantar fasciitis on the right foot, and it involves inflammation of a thick band of tissue that runs across the bottom of the foot and connects the heel bone to the toes. So those broken toes weakened that. And one time, I didn't know that I had this. And when I was in Dallas at Joni's conference, I went out dancing all night and came back at like, you know, 1:30 in the morning to the hotel, and my foot was spasming. The bottom of it was the scariest thing. I had never experienced it. It was so painful. I had to run to the bathtub and get water on it and like massage it to get it to stop. It's kind of like a Charlie horse. You know, if you've ever had a Charlie horse before, it's that kind of cramping, you know. Oh my God, it's awful. But, you know, years of dancing in heels didn't help either. So my elbows and my hips pop. Like whenever I'm working out with weights and I'm doing the triceps, first I have to take the weight and I have to go pop, and it pops my elbows. And then I can do my reps. Difficulty swallowing in the morning, larynx closes up at night. It's true. Like I was taking turmeric and some other things in the morning, and they were like these horse pills. I had to stop all that. I have to take very minimal pills in the morning. And then I take like my major vitamins and stuff after dinner, you know, because my throat's like closed up, which sucks because I was a singer, you know. Super bendy. I did swimming at the age of 8, butterfly, and was picked for my flexible arms. It's true. They were like, oh, she can do butterfly. Stick her in there, right? So I like was the, you know, the winner in that 8 and under category for butterfly. And then I switched to freestyle. And then when I became anorexic as a teenager, they put me in the 500 yard because I had stamina, you know, like the other swimmers would push hard and then they'd die. And I would just you know, they'd pass me, but at the end I'd be steady and then boom, I'd get like first or second, you know. But all of that shoulder work has messed up my shoulders, you know. And then my yoga teacher always said I was a freak of nature. She would like show me off in front of class, like, oh, do the dove, show everybody what you can do. And then 26 years of being a professional belly dancer, doing the splits was always my shtick. So that was like, you know, Turkish floor work was one of the things that I was known for. And so that involves a lot of, you know, yoga, back bends, you know, things that we would consider are more, you know, flexible based, you know, that was like my thing. But what happens is when you become a party trick, you are overworking your joints, and then something that was once very loose becomes very stiff as you get older. And that's what's happened to me. So that's why I had to retire. So here we are. Part 2, internal organs. This one's fun. Bad allergies. I have dairy, milk, and seafood allergies, and environmental, you know, tree pollen and grass and corn and that kind of stuff. I've never been officially diagnosed, but I meet all the criteria for this. It explains why I go into an anaphylactic type shock if I get too hot. You know, like if I dance too hard or I'm in weather that's too hot, I will get hives on my elbows, my face, my knees, and I get super weak. I used to ride horses in the summer when I was like 11, 12 years old. And one time I was carrying tack back to the tack room and I started going into this, like, not a heat stroke, but what are they? Heat exhaustion. We thought it was heat exhaustion, but it was mast cell activation syndrome. It's very similar to heat exhaustion. And so that's why they never caught it, you know? MCAS is a condition in which the patient experiences repeated episodes of the symptoms of anaphylaxis, allergic symptoms such as hives, swelling, low blood pressure, difficulty breathing, and severe diarrhea. High levels of mast cell mediators are released during those episodes. The episodes respond to treatment with inhibitors or blockers of mast cell mediators. The episodes are called idiopathic, which means that the mechanism is unknown. That is, not caused by allergic antibody or secondary to other known conditions that activate normal mast cells. In other words, heat. Heat is what does it for me. Evaluation for MCAS starts with determining whether the symptoms occur in separate attacks and are typical symptoms of an anaphylactic reaction without a clear cause. Mast cell mediators increase during the episode. Those mediators should be measured during acute episodes and at baseline, looking for elevations during symptoms. Finally, the improvement with treatment using inhibitors of mast cell mediators completes the diagnosis. So the problem with that diagnosis is that chances are you're not going to have a flare-up when you're at the doctor's office. Chances are you're not. You know, you need to be in a stressful situation for this to happen, and that's not going to happen. So this is why a lot of people don't get diagnosed. And one time, I will say, what helped me, I usually always carry my Benadryl and histamines with me, but I didn't have it, but I did have my Flonase, which is a steroidal-based It's not an antihistamine, but like it helps the tissues in your sinuses that are inflamed relax. So it's a steroid. And that's all I had with me. And thank God, because it stopped the reaction. I mean, it was scary. I was like, we're going to have to call an ambulance or something, you know, like it can get scary. And then, so the third thing for internal organs, I had uterine rupture in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy with my daughter. And when I was at the hospital, they didn't know what it was. You know, they were trying to figure out, she came like a week early. And, you know, normally for a first pregnancy, it's a long 36, 48 hour labor, right? Well, because I had uterine rupture, Mother Nature's way of saving the baby is a rapid labor. So I went into labor at 6:30 in the morning, and I had her about 12 hours later. And I was, the doctor was certain I was going to have a C-section. He was like, you know, just wait. I'm going to go and do another one. I'm do another C-section. Okay. And then I'm going to come back and get you. Well, by that time I was at 9 centimeters dilated. You have to be 10 to give a vaginal birth. He was like, hey, you got 1 more centimeter. So my doula turned to me and was like, we got this. We're going to do it. So she got me through the next centimeter, and I was able to deliver her vaginally, but she came out with my fever. So she had to go straight to the neonatal ICU, and she was there for 4 days. Now, luckily, she didn't get any infection because there was no infection. You know, that's the thing. They thought, oh, for certain she's going to have whatever caused this, an infection. No, she didn't, because it was an anaphylactic reaction to having, you know, your tissue that stretched, you know. And then I had endometriosis, dermoid tumor removal of it and the ovary that it was attached to on the right side in January 8th, 2010. And then when they had me opened up in the surgery, they did a full flush of my abdominal cavity with 3 liters of fluid after finding extensive endometriosis. And the doctor said it was the worst case they'd ever seen. Yeah, lucky me. And then finally, I had a uterine hysterectomy June of 2017, and they left the left ovary, but the tubes are taken out because even the tubes can get pregnant. Isn't that crazy? So they got to take that out too, but they left the ovary, so I had some hormones, you know. I've always had kind of heart palpitations, but it's nothing that I've gone to a cardiologist for, but I know what it feels like because it runs on my dad's side, you know, and he had has heart problems. I've always had very low blood pressure and low body temperature, usually around 97.1 when I was younger, and now it's a bit higher after menopause, and that's very normal with EDS people. And POTS presents itself when I walk up a flight of stairs, not just when standing up from a chair. Its heart rate will go from a sitting pulse of 74 to about 120. So POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's a condition that affects blood flow. POTS causes the development of symptoms, usually lightheadedness, fainting, and an uncomfortable rapid increase in heartbeat that comes on when standing up from a reclining position and relieved by laying down. So if you get up and you're real lightheaded and you faint, you got POTS. But you know, most people that have POTS don't have it that extreme. And so again, the doctors, you know, are testing you in the office. For me, it doesn't present in the doctor's office. It presents when I go from here up to the 3rd floor, and my heart, I can check it on my Fitbit. You know, it goes from 74 to 120. That's not normal. 74 to 90. Okay, that's normal, you know, for going a flight of stairs, but above 100, that's not normal. Okay, so for the next one, part 3, lymphatic. So this one is pretty crazy. lymph node infection in the left groin and surgery, April 8th of 2009. So I had this pain. I had like a stomach infection. And I had, I thought I got antibiotics for it, and it just didn't go away all the way. So the lymph node that was closest there was reacting to that infection. And the lymph node swelled up to like 3 by 3.5 inches. It was like a plum. And because of where it was, they're like, you know, we can't just drain this. You have to go into surgery and we have to drain this. And then they packed it with gauze after they drained it. And let me tell you, when they took that gauze out, it was as painful as childbirth. It was awful, awful, awful. Oh, and because I didn't have a C-section, they thought I was going to have a C-section. They wouldn't give me an epidural, because you will not get an epidural. You'll get a spinal tap instead if you're going to get a C-section. But by the time he came back, it was no go. And so I didn't have, the only thing they gave me for pain was Nubane. Nubane is, it's a narcotic. It just makes you, it doesn't kill the pain. It just makes you not care about it. You know, you feel it, but it's kind of like somewhere off over there, you know? So that's all I had was Nubane for that whole thing. It was just crazy. And so, yeah, so lymph node infection, that's very rare. And then the lymph node here will clog up. It's always tender. And then the heavy face sweating, that also goes with the MCAS, the anaphylactic type reaction, right? And then everybody that has EDS is in the autism spectrum somewhere, you know, whether they're full on autistic or Asperger's, or they're like me, just in the middle, ADHD, dyslexic, or they, you know, just have some mild anxiety or whatever. So everybody has something. And so this is the way it's presented for me, because when you think about it, you know, the swelling doesn't just stop at your head. Your brain will swell too. And that swelling of the brain is what causes that fogginess, that inability to kind of grasp things. But what I've noticed is that people that have EDS either have a very low IQ or they have a very, very high IQ. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of stuff in the middle. Anxiety and depression, super psychic, have a lot of precognitive dreams, very empathic to others. You just feel others like through your skin. Very sensitive hearing, loud noises or places overwhelm the senses. When my daughter was little, I could not take her to an auditorium or a big crowded room. She would wail, just cry and cry. And we just couldn't do it till she was like, you know, 5 or 6. Vertigo. And this is something that I didn't even realize I had until about 2015 when I was taking pictures up in Indianapolis. And whoa, vertigo is a full-on physical sensation. It is not in your head. You know, it's not like a fear. It's not like an emotional fear of heights. It's a physical reaction to being in heights, so that when you're up there, your body starts to sway, and that's what causes the fear, is that you don't have control over your body. It is not fun, y'all. And then I was anorexic and had body dysmorphia at the age of 16, because when you have all of these food issues and you're not absorbing right, your colon's backed up, you know, you're putting on weight. And then with the loose skin, I always had loose skin on top of my stomach. So even when I was thin, I never felt thin. You know, I always felt like I had extra weight, and that's the body dysmorphia. There's like a disconnection between how you're perceiving, what you perceive your body, how you feel it, and how you see it. It's not the same because of that swelling and loose skin. And it's something I still struggle with. I'm a lot better with it, but knowing now that I have this, it's like, well, no wonder, you know? It's not fun, y'all. So before I go into how it presents in a birth chart, do you have any questions or comments or anything?
It's interesting how like a series of symptoms coming together is, you know, how it's not easily diagnosable, as you said. How it's also how one of the interesting things, as you said, was or some of the symptoms only show up privately, but not at the doctor's time when it's getting tested, when it's supposed to get tested and all that. So that was an interesting kind of thing, something for people to be aware about also. Like, if the doctor tests you and tells you that, hey, you don't have a thing, and you get misdiagnosed, well, you are going to have a different set of problems, that kind of thing.
And there's a lot of misdiagnosis, but there's also a lot of medical gaslighting. Oh, it's bad. Oh,
Right.
yeah. If some doctors, there's a lot of wonderful, I think the majority of doctors are wonderful, but you're going to get those stray outliers that when they can't figure something out, they say, oh, well, it's all in your head. I can't figure it out. It's not adding up. So you must be making this up. You just want to get painkillers, don't you? Oh, yeah. Oh, you cannot believe the gaslighting goes on. The stories in the group. It just blows your mind. It makes you so mad. I mean, to the point where it's like, you got to get an injury lawyer for some people, like if a doctor, if you get a doctor to a point where he's finally saying, yes, this is a diagnosis. And yes, this person needs to be on disability. And then you go to the court and the judge suddenly thinks he's a doctor. Oh, this isn't a diagnosis. No, I'm not giving you disability.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, it's unbelievable. It's going to get real tasty here too, with all these new people coming in that are figuring it out,
Yeah.
So this is just the stuff I've seen so far. So you're going to have these things afflicted. Saturn, which indicates disease, stiffness, looseness of skeletal system and joints, obviously Saturn, right? I mean, all disease is Saturn, but it's definitely, especially the joints. Mars, which rules the cardiovascular and the muscular systems, which, is where the pain and inflammation comes in. K2, which is the DNA part that because you're inheriting it from your ancestors. So, K2's got to be presenting itself somehow. And then obviously Mercury, because Mercury rules the skin and the connective tissue. So those things are going to be what are going to show anomalies. I've seen Parivartana yoga between the above planets. Those planets exalted or debilitated or in their own sign. It's not always good to have too much strength in something. It can break it, or like we always say, a debilitated planet can make somebody humble, but an exalted one can make them arrogant. And it can also exaggerate those qualities if there are other things like Rahu or something there to, expand Jupiter to expand them, right? Important planets in Capricorn or Aquarius because of Saturn, Scorpio or Aries because of Mars, and then Virgo because of Mercury. And I also wanted to put in Gemini too. That as well will present itself. Yogas involving the first house of the self or the body, right? So Raj yogas, even though Raj yoga is a good thing, it's going to point to something, especially if it's concerning the first house. The sixth house of health should be important. The D6 Shashtamsha chart should be important. And of course, that you can only get that when you have a firm birth time. If you don't, then you've just got to, use the moon chart. Pay attention to K2's placement as EDS is inherited, and you must have others in your family that have it for them to even test you for it. Isn't that crazy? You have to have somebody else, and for me, it's my mom. Arista yoga, which is a link between the rulers of the 6th, 8th, and 12th houses, which shows spirituality attained through great suffering, usually illness. A Shashtaka yoga, which is also called a quincunx in Western astrology. So instead of the houses of 6, 8, and 12, we're concerned with planets that are 6 and 8 places away from any planet, any important planet, like, something 6 places from Saturn or 8 places from Saturn. It will show difficulties, misfortune, and disease. And then these are the nakshatras that I found that are highlighted. So obviously Shatabishak, right? I mean, hard to cure diseases should be involved. Hard to cure diseases are not just addictions though. EDS falls in the category of rare diseases. So This is what I want astrologers to really be aware of is don't just jump on the bandwagon when you see Shat to be Shak and you automatically think drug addict. Okay. It's not always that, but you have to ask yourself, okay, if someone is a drug addict, why are they taking drugs? Why are they in so much pain? People take drugs because they're in pain. Okay. What's the source of the pain? Is it a physical pain? Is it an emotional pain? You know? But rare diseases, because they're hard to cure, also follow under this star. Ashwini and Swati, and I put them together because they're opposite. Will show the Ashwini will show the racing brain syndrome, and Swati will show the airhead. Okay. ADHD is common with EDS patients. Autism spectrum and speech impediments can be seen from both of these placements. Purva Falguni is common with autism spectrum. Bhaga, the god of bliss, loves to party and socialize, but autistic people don't like to be in crowds. So it's like the opposite meaning of Purva Falguni. You know, it's the dislike of being in a party that can present itself, especially if Rahu or Saturn are there or something, right? Or it's in, you know, well, we'll see in one of the charts, but it definitely comes out that way. Jyeshta is usually highlighted somehow because it's the eldest one, and old age can give you chronic illnesses like pain and fatigue, and it's ruled by Mercury, which rules the connective tissue. Maga is associated with thrones, so vertigo can be seen here, i.e. falling from a high place. Maga also because of the Pitris, or the ancestors. EDS is a genetic disorder. Hasta, because of its association with the hands. Many EDS people have fingers that sublux or dislocate. And Purvabhadrapada, because it is associated with busting patterns. Chromosomes are patterns of DNA strands. So if you are here to highlight this or, you know, break the family curse, right? Purvabhadrapada is going to show up in one of your charts somewhere.
Well, this is interesting, Katya. I can definitely say that, definitely from a planetary perspective, the only thing I would also add here is that both Rahu and Ketu is linked with DNA thing actually. So only thing I would add here is that both Rahu and Ketu indicates the DNA. So Ketu definitely does indicate DNA. Yeah. So, but anyway, even if you have any planet in Ketu, conjunct Ketu, it is always aspecting Rahu. So that kind of link is already there. So remember, usually one thing that people tend to forget is that Ketu is of course linked with your ancestors and for your DNA for sure. Rahu is also the counterpart in the DNA. So within the DNA, you had twin strands at least for the human body. So you can see that, you know, the twin strand thing, Rahu is one strand, Ketu is the other strand. That's an easier way to look at that. So the only thing I would add here, you're basically getting all the malefics then, Saturn, Mars, Rahu, Ketu, and then you're having the skin, which is Mercury. Of course, that is a very direct thing. Ketu, of course, like I said, Ketu is capturing Rahu by default. That is one thing that should be implied and understood anyways. But then Rahu also can indicate this particular thing, because since you mentioned DNA, there is a hereditary component to it. And this reminds me, so in my land of Kerala, where I'm from, there are a lot of snakes. So there's sometimes they say there is a curse of a snake in the family. So what happens is that one of those things which you mentioned, the cafe or lay kind of birthmark, right, in which you have these large brown birthmarks. But if you have a curse of a snake, the snake curse, usually you have a white patch in your skin. Like your neck will have a bigger white patch kind of birthmark. So because we are brown, right, we are brown people. The cafe au lait thing is like a white patch thing here, you know. So it's one of those interesting things. So that white patch, and you see that actually, the father has it, the child has it, the grandfather has it.
It's opposite. So like my patch is a little bit darker than my skin.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So exactly right. So it's the opposite kind of thing to your natural skin tone. That's exactly right. So now, so that is one thing I saw, and I've seen that also. Like people, they say that they trace their history of the ancestors. There was one story which I know directly, is that their ancestor apparently cut down a tree, and supposedly the name of that land where they cut down the tree was that the snake resides in this land. That is the name of the land, you know. And then the ancestor cut down the only tree that is there, and supposedly eventually astrologers came to look at their family issues and all that, and of course they were not doing well financially, they were having all other kind of problems also. Turns out that they actually had killed a snake, and there is a problem. The snake curse has been passed, and that is very direct. So the birthmark kind of thing, as you said, that is one thing. So of course, karmically, if you killed a snake or you killed an animal that is considered to be magical, a Rahu Ketu kind of thing, a Rahu Ketu kind of animal, then this kind of problem is considered to be like a curse kind of thing, actually. So of course, ancestral curse is one thing. That's one thing I just want to add here. So Rahu Ketu DNA is perfect, actually. And then rest, I really like the point which you mentioned about how exalted planets can also create problems, actually. Exalted planets, if it's the sixth lord, eighth lord, or 12th lord, it is going to create problems. Of course, they might say the dignity is good, but then it is still having excess energy. So it will actually express itself quite easily through the, through the physical body also. Now, of course, when they say like the word for exalted is actually Ucha. Ucha means something that is high or something that is very visible. So sometimes it can also mean your wealth is visible, but at the same time, your problems can be visible on your body also. That kind of thing can also happen when you have exalted planets. Now, here also I would add to the point that if you have any planets on the exaltation degrees of those planets also, there's also one more subtle influence how that can play out. Now, the what you mentioned about the Arishta Yoga is very good, 6th house of health and all that. D6 chart, of course, for health and analysis, that's very important. Pay attention to Ketu's placement. Yeah. So here also the 8th point I will really add pay attention to Rahu's placement also. Look at what Rahu and Ketu is doing. Both might also give you clues for that. Arishta Yoga, of course, Arishta Yoga 6, 8, 12 is, yeah, and as you correctly said, spirituality can be attained through great suffering. Usually illnesses can be very deep openings for your own spirituality. And as you mentioned, 6, 8, 12 houses, that's very direct. Now the nakshatra also, if you carefully look at, now Satabishag, as you mentioned, hard to diagnose diseases because as you were mentioning the EDS through these lectures, through the previous slides, one thing that kept on thinking was, oh man, this is so complicated. You almost have to get like 100 different things to like analyze. Only when they all come in together can you actually say that EDS is actually happening, right? So it's a possibility that Satabishag was a very direct kind of thing, as you mentioned. It is a rare, it indicates a rare disease and all that. And many times I've seen these natives do go to 100 doctors trying to identify what's going on and all that. So, and of course, I'm sure you would have gone to 100 doctors yourself also, no matter what. That's one thing. That's the other aspect. Ashwini Swati is also a very important point, as you correctly said. Now, if you carefully look at again, Swati Nakshatra is the point where Saturn is getting exalted actually. So Saturn gets exalted in Swati. So you can see this Swati planets can also create this kind of similar problems. Purva Falguni, now this is a very important point also. Now here I want to highlight one thing. Purva Falguni is a party placements and so forth. They allow to be with company and all that. But then say you have a malefic here in Purva Falguni. Say you have a Saturn, Rahu, Ketu or Mars or something. Then there is a possibility then that Purva Falguni qualities is being afflicted by that malefic planet. So there is a possibility that kind of thing could actually play out. Now, Jyeshtha is also a very important point here. Now, usually there are some cases where the eldest child in the family is inheriting the challenging karmas for the family because they are the one who are energetically stronger to handle the karma. So many times you see in certain families, the eldest one is the one who is having the most problem. Now, in reality, what is actually happening is the eldest one is actually handling the karmas for the entire siblings actually. And that's a real thing. And that needs to be acknowledged actually. So eldest one always has a very energetic thing and all that. In some cases, if you have planets in Jyeshtha Nakshatra, naturally you might also act as the eldest one in the family also, even if you are the younger one. That can also happen. That is one aspect. And Maga, as you said, that's also a Ketu ruled Nakshatra, which is good. Hasta, because of its association with hands. And remember, as you mentioned, EDS people have finger that subluxes or dislocate. Now, Hasta is also the point where Mercury is getting exalted. So any planet you have being here can also indicate there is a potential link between your Mercury also, between your skin issues and all that. That can also happen. Puravadrapada, because it is associated with busting pattern, chromosomes of, and Puravadrapada also, it is an interesting nakshatra because it is in Aquarius, which is ruled by Rahu. It is also, one pada is also going to Pisces, which is a natural 12th of the zodiac. Now, here the only additional nakshatra I can think about is, I mean, literally I would say Rahu, all Rahu Ketu Nakshatra is something I would use that. Rahu Ketu nakshatras can contribute to this particular disease, because Ardra is one nakshatra, and then Mula nakshatra is also one more nakshatra. I would think about. Again, the logic is that Rahu Ketu is going to carry the karma of your ancestors or your DNA. Your DNA karma will play out. Of course, these nakshatras, planets in these nakshatras is 6, 8, 12 houses and so forth. So 6, 8, 12 Lord connections or house connection also. Planets in those nakshatras in 6th house, 8th house, 12th house, all that can also trigger that. That's also one more thing I'm inclined to say. Purafalguni is interesting. Jyeshta for sure is interesting. And then Puravadrapada also, that is interesting. Now, what I would say here, from a nakshatra perspective, the one thing that was very direct is that one important quality in my opinion is to always observe what you see directly. Now, for instance, if, as you mentioned, if the EDS EDS syndrome is actually having the mascot of a zebra, that itself is a big clue. So from a nakshatra perspective, immediately you can see that a horse is linked with Satyabhishak nakshatra and Ashwini nakshatra. So immediately you
Oh,
can
and
see
you know
Rahu.
what? I was reading in our group the other day, somebody said, are twins common
That's correct.
with EDS? And
That's
all these
correct.
people are like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, Ashwini. And
That's
also
correct.
Bharani, because of the connection with the womb and all the
correct.
intermediate, like for
That's
me,
correct.
my Saturn's in Bharani. So hello,
That's
you
correct.
know.
Yeah. So you can see Saturn, for instance, is getting debilitated in Bharani. So you can see this uterine kind of thing, problems around uterus and all that kind of thing you can see.
Oh yeah.
So the exaltation point and debilitation point of these planets also is something additional I would add. So Saturn getting exalted in Swati, gets debilitated in Bharani. Also like Mercury exaltation point in Hasta, debilation point is in Uttravadapada. Mars exaltation point is Dhanishta, debilation point is Ashlesha. And Rahu Ketu, there's no solid debilation point and so forth, but at least that's something to be mindful of. So, though some astrologers in Parashara, they say, Parashara Hora, they say that Rahu gets exalted 20 degrees, Ketu gets exalted at 20 degrees of Taurus is where Rahu's exaltation is. 20 degrees of Scorpio or Jyeshta Nakshatra is where Ketu's exaltation is. So that's why your elder siblings are like a protective force for the entire family, actually. Ketu is getting exalted in Scorpio. So they do carry, Jyeshta Nakshatra do carry a protective, energetic thing there, actually. But anyway, of course, like I said, there's a 100% Satyabhishak and Ashwini link is very directly obvious just because there is zebra thing. Now, Satyabhishak Nakshatra, in my opinion, is more prominent for this because, again, 100 things have to come together for the symptom to be diagnosed. And quite simply, Rahu is usually connected with dark colored clothes and so forth also. Anything dark in color, you can say that most likely it's a Rahu influence. So someone is wearing a dark. So in fact, I had to tell some clients actually. They say I'm depressed for last year or so. Then I say, what color clothes do you wear? They'll say I'm most of the time wearing black hoodies or something like that. And I'm saying, that's the first thing you should eliminate in your wardrobe. At least in your daily wardrobe, you should remove black color. Unless except on Saturdays.
Unless you're wearing zebra.
Yeah. Well, you can see now zebra is also interesting thing. Zebra is like, okay, fine. Zebra is like, okay, kind of thing, because at least it is white. But even so, if you can avoid the more brighter colors you're wearing, the more brighter colors you surround yourself with, white, for instance, or even orange. Orange is very good, which is yellow or orange is very good because that is Jupiter in color.
I like too. And my husband's always telling me, you wear too much black. And I'm like, is that even possible?
Yeah. So that's the thing, so the thing is that wearing black is, so usually I've seen avoiding the black color reduces the Rahu influence in general. So that is one aspect there. So if you actually avoid the Rahu influence as much as you can, Saturn is usually deep blue color, but Rahu is black. So immediately that's the other thing also. Zebra is very interesting link for Satyabhishak Nakshatra in my opinion. So perhaps, another one energetic thing I can definitely say is to get the blessing of zebra, just contribute towards wildlife protection causes of zebra and all that, or horses or something, that kind of thing. And of course, it's very interesting. You are also one of the factors, one of the symptoms which you identified was around a heat stroke when you're taking a horse, actually. Right. So again, you can see this horse kind of thing that was playing out. So yeah, this is very interesting, a very interesting thing. So let's go ahead.
Okay.
Katya.
Yes, let's take a look at the chart that I have for. So this was the article that my friend Darcy showed me. Said, look, did you know Elvis Presley had EDS too? And I said, what? But it makes total sense. I mean, he was known for, gyrating his hips on stage. I mean, hello, you got to have loose joints like me belly dancing, right? And I think, well, we're pretty sure that he also has Melungeon blood. So that's a whole other thing where I think that now this disease or disorder is found in all races from what I've seen, but there seems to be a predominant, it's stronger in people from the Mediterranean. And when you think about belly dancing coming from Turkey, that makes more sense, doesn't it? I mean, if they're already genetically more bendy, of course they're going to dance like that, right? And we're pretty certain that he has Melungeon blood like me. And so it's probably where he's getting it from. But this story, and you can read this book, The Strange Medical Saga of Elvis Presley by Dr. Forrest Tennant, retired physician who specialized in pain medicine and addiction treatment and explores the fascinating medical history of Elvis. And here's the article link. It's on the Pain Network, Pain News Network. And so, there's lots of stories like this where they uncover, things that people that have it, we don't realize. But he's such a classic case. And it's so sad that we didn't know because he died at the age of 42. That is classic vascular EDS timing. And his mom died at 46. So, it's like hindsight's 2020. You don't realize it at the time. You look back and you go, oh my God, of course. Why didn't I see it before, right? Sorry. There we go. Okay, so we have, see, here he is. He's on his tiptoe. That ain't normal. Normal people don't move like that, okay? So I think that and that's the thing, when they're talking about, well, diagnose horses, you should be diagnosing things that are obvious. This is pretty obvious. We just didn't know before. We just didn't know. It's like we didn't know about ADHD or dyslexia or any of that stuff until late 80s, So the good thing about this chart is that we have a firm time of birth. And it's at 4:35 a.m. in Tupelo, Mississippi. And we have him as a Jyotisha Lagna. Hello, there we are. Ruled by Mars, cardiovascular, showing, the cardiovascular problems right off the bat. And then Jyotisha ruled by Mercury, the skin. So right there, right off the bat, we see he's got some of the things we talked about. Moon in Shatabishak, conjunct Saturn, even better, in the 4th house of the mother. He probably inherited this from his mother, who was Melungeon as well. 6th house of health, Uranus in Ashwini, racing brain syndrome, right? Mars in Virgo, Hasta Nakshatra, probably was misdiagnosed with arthritis, but it's actually EDS, very common thing that happens. Mars in Virgo, he developed severe constipation and megacolon in the last few years of his life, requiring medical treatment, including enemas. Mercury in the 2nd house with the sun, the voice. Mercury is burnt, last degree of a fire sign. And with the sun, I mean, hello, this throat was fried. K2 in Cancer, Pushya, pointing to the mother, inheriting it from the mother. And with Pluto retrograde, nutritional deficiency could have been a massive problem because of his colon. If you are not absorbing nutrients properly in your colon, nothing else works. And this was really the basis. Of course, I always listen to Coast to Coast AM radio with George Norrie, and he always has on Dr. Weil, I think is his name. And he's the Critical Health News Network. And he's always talking about colon health, colon. It's all about absorption of nutrients. If you're not absorbing, ain't nothing gonna work right. And so it was a steady decline at that point. And the 11th house is 6th from the 6th. And that is the ruler of the 11th house is really acts like a malefic. Planets in the 11th can be good, but the ruler of the 11th is not good. And that's Mercury. And that's Mercury here in Marika house. And also rules the 8th house. So yeah, that's just off the top of my head without digging in deep. What else do you see, Santhip?
That's great, actually. One thing clearly, as you mentioned, is Jyotisha and all that is very, very direct, and how it's inherited because, Now, see, the other thing also I begin to highlight is look at the disposed of Rahu and Ketu. So that is also going to carry the energy of the Rahu and Ketu one way or the other. Not many, so many people tend to ignore that. So that is one thing I've seen being important. Here you can see Moon is actually the disposed of Ketu. So you can see, so that of course Moon is going to be an agent of the ancestral karma. Moon is going to going to an ancestral nakshatra of Satabisha also. So you see that kind of thing playing out. And it's very interesting, the 6th house of health, right? Uranus in Ashwini. Now, in general, I've seen whenever you're talking about any chart, some of the planets in the sky is matching up with the chart planets actually. So right now, Uranus is in Ashwini, right? So it's kind of interesting to see how that is actually playing out. So that's one always thing to
Now
look
we're
for.
finding out the eureka moment of his health. Oh my God, that's what Uranus is. Uranus makes you go, and now we know why he was so sick. And and this, I hate to interrupt you, but I just want to say really fast that he was judged for his pain. He was judged for self-medicating his pain and even medicating with doctors. And it's so sad. He was just trying to get better, and he was only 42. Anyway.
Yeah. So that's, of course, as you mentioned, Mars in Virgo is a very direct problem with colon and all that. So digestion problems is easily seen with Mars in Virgo. That's a very direct thing. So usually they have to, these natives do have challenges with, as you mentioned, constipation, megacolon kind of thing, all that. Usually, I think there's one more syndrome, right, with the column, one of these bowel syndromes and whatnot. So that kind of
irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah, that kind of, yeah. So that's also usually linked there and also makes sense. Mercury is in 2nd house, and you said Mercury is very close to Sun, so to the point where it could be considered as combust actually. So that is affecting skin and one into all that. Also, you can see Ketu in Cancer also. Look at the degree of Ketu. Ketu is very close to the degree of exaltation of Jupiter actually, which is 5 degrees of Cancer. So you see this kind of.
You're right. Nutrition. There's the nutrition.
Yeah, so that's also one more element there and so forth. And as you highlighted here, Ketu is Pluto also, which can also created problems. So perhaps Elvis did not just have the peace of mind in his home, just to have a good meal kind of thing going on, So probably he was having people around or whatnot, that kind of thing going on. But anyway, it was a different time in era, all that. So anyway, but
and obviously, the Neptune retrograde in the 10th. I mean, let's talk about that for a second, because his career was larger than life, and the effect that he had on people was like a drug. He was like a drug, and he had this fog around him, this mystical charm, and women would just faint at the concerts, just scream their heads off. And that's that Neptune retrograde in the 10th house, and in Purva Falguni. I mean, that's the party nakshatra, He was the ultimate charmer.
That's correct. Yeah, exactly. Not at all that. So you can see that kind of thing happening. Yeah, without doubt. So definitely, I would You can see in general planets in Satyabhisha, a complicated syndrome like EDS and all that can definitely be a factor. That is something to think about, especially if you have 100 associated kind of problems and so forth. It's kind of interesting also. You can see how himself, his doctors could also have been at a loss for him. Jupiter is in 12th house also. So you also have to look at supportive planets. Are you getting good support from doctors and so forth? So sometimes with Jupiter in 12th house, the doctors themselves are at a loss, like with regard to identifying what's going on and all that. That's also something that can happen. So usually you can see those kind of challenges there. Only something that gets better with time. So that's the other aspect with Moon Saturn also. So, but yeah, it's unfortunate. Elvis did have a short life, so that's a different kind of thing.
And also, this is where Saturn is right now too.
That's correct. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's you can see why.
And that's a Raj Yoga. I mean, he's ruler within the fourth.
That's correct.
So even though he's causing problems, he's also kind of helping him to do his dharma.
That's correct. Exactly right. Now, in fact, look at Saturn is having a link with Rahu also here. So Saturn is the disposed of Rahu. So, well, of course, Saturn is going to carry the energies of Rahu as well. So you can see the genetic karma playing out for him. So probably he was in pain when he was performing, but then, at least he was, he fulfilled dharma. A lot of other people got to enjoy and all that. That kind of thing did play out. So.
And Danishta, is the richest one. And that's the thing, people always say, well, gosh, if you're in so much pain, then how are you performing? Well, I'm performing because of adrenaline. It's called adrenaline. It's called when I'm on that dance floor, I don't feel a thing until afterward. You're out there, that adrenaline pushes you and you do stuff that you can't normally do. But then afterwards, when it wears off and the pain sets in, you're like, oh, what did I do to myself?
Yeah. So now there are a couple of things here also, subtle points which I can highlight. One is that if you carefully, people forget to observe the aspects of planets. So for instance, if you look at Saturn here, second house aspect, third house aspect from Saturn is actually going to 2 degrees of Aries actually. So that's one thing where you begin to see, 2 degrees of Aries is again Ashwin Nakshatra. So that's also one more factor you can.
Wait, back up. Say that again. Saturn's doing what?
Saturn's third house aspect, right? Third aspect of Saturn.
On Uranus.
Yeah, on Uranus. Yeah, that's correct. So Saturn is, and very carefully see it is going on Uranus also. But nakshatra wise, the aspect is falling in Ashwini Nakshatra. So you can see Saturn is also going to contribute towards Ashwini Nakshatra kind of things also. Now, of course, look at Mars also. Mars 8th house aspect is at 19 degrees of Aries. It's falling 8th house away from Mars. That is going to Aries. So 19 degrees of Aries is where 8th house aspect of Mars will actually flow in. So 19 degrees of Aries is literally where Saturn gets debilitated also. So you can see that's again contributing to this kind of a problem kind of thing. That's also the other couple of things I can say. So always pay attention to the degrees of planets also. You'll be surprised on those cases. So here, for instance, look at Saturn's 10th house aspect actually as a final point in this chart. You can see Saturn's 10th house aspect is going to 2 degrees of Scorpio. 2 degree 47 inches of Scorpio, very close to Moon's debilitation point. So again, you're seeing this Moon is not getting support and all that from the exaltation or debilitation points also.
Hey, so that's very insightful.
Yeah.
Because Saturn's sitting with Moon and he's giving his 10th aspect to Moon's debilitation point. And as we know from previous discussions, this can uncover some of the mother's problems. Because Moon debilitation often points to whoever has this as a child, they were not protected by their mother from abuse.
Yeah, that's correct.
So there could be an abusive pattern in the mother's side that created a weak, DNA link to present itself like this.
Yeah. So variety of factors for sure. So all that. So usually paying attention to the actual degrees of the planets is one more thing I would encourage. Definitely pay attention to if any other planet is very close to the exaltation point or the debilitation point of any planet. Exaltation degree or debilitation degree of any planet, you can definitely see. And if that planet is influencing that point, particular point also, now you have a higher chance of that particular karma playing out. So it's like a mixture of karmas. So the more involved you are with the world, the more the stresses associated with the world will also come your way. So it's one of those things that you'll have to be mindful of actually. But pay attention to these factors. That will also give you deeper insights also. That's also one more thing I can definitely recommend. In general, though his Mars is considered to be in a good position, that being his Lagna Lord and all that, but then Mars is going to 11th house actually. And 11th house in general is something that gets better with time. But in Elvis' case, it was like challenging because it got worse with time. The more fame he had and all that. So there's a different set of problems. So to the point where they say Elvis still went into hiding, right? So that kind of thing is what they say. So God knows about that. But anyways, all that is fine. Let's see. So that's what I have.
Okay,
on this
great. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So because we have birth time, we can look at his D12. This is something that I really have been doing lately. I'll just kind of observe people, right? Take it all in. Take in their story. What nakshatra are they presenting, right? And then look at their birth chart. If that nakshatra is not in their D1, it's got to be somewhere. And a lot of times I'll find it's in the D12, what you're looking for, because it's stuff they inherited from their parents. And the sun is the most important planet for this chart. So this is his D12. We have Mercury in the 6th house of health in Scorpio, ruled by Mars, and Jyeshtha, ruled by Mercury. Hello, here we are again. Just like his Lagna, his D1, right? Being highlighted. Sun is the most important planet in the D12, and the sun is in Hasta, Virgo, ruled by Mercury, also the hand, and that's where his Mars is. So if you superimpose the two charts, you can see the congruence, right? Sun in the 4th house of the mother, probably inherited this disease from his mother's side. Again, we're back to that. Mars, and also his dad was very close with his father, and he had a very nurturing relationship with his father. And so whenever you see like Sun or Mars or Saturn in the 4th, a lot of times the father has to take on the mother's role. Or if you see like Moon in the 9th, then mother has to take on the father's role. It's like a single parent indication. While his parents were married, because of his mother's health issues, his dad had to step up and do a lot of the stuff that his mom had to do. And you can see that here. And Sun in the 4th of the mother probably inherited it from his mom. Mars in Aries in the 11th house, 6th from the 6th, also with Rahu and Neptune retrograde. That's the drugs, right? 11th house ruler is a malefic. Mars is also there. So Mars in his own sign in the 11th house with Rahu and Neptune retrograde, indicating drugs and alcohol. 9th house of the father ruler, Saturn, in the 10th house of career with Venus, opposed the sun. Father had to be the mother, but the father also was the one that helped him with his career. His dad was the one anchoring in that creative career. Saturn and Venus in the 10th opposed the sun. Father nurtured his career and was a constant in his life. Moon in the 12th in Rohini. Mother was smothering him. She died at the age of 46 of a heart attack. Another indication that he inherited it from her. Ved's life expectancy is around 52. So, and the Uranus, she, in Mrgashira too, I mean, she just chased him, smothered him. That was her only baby, her only child. So, nothing could happen to him or she would freak out. It was like an anxiety thing, So yeah, what do you think? What do you see?
Yeah, definitely the D12 chart can indicate, how the karmas with their parents and all that. So as you correctly said, one suggestion I would always say is to look at what the ascendant lord is doing through all the divisional charts to see how your health is getting affected through those respective divisional charts. So Mars is your Lagna Lord, Mars is the Lagna Lord in Elvis' chart, directly conjunct Rahu in the D12 chart. Only in the D12 chart is a Rahu conjunction happening. And more importantly, it is going to the 6th house of the original D1 chart in the D12 chart also. So it is in the 11th house of the D12 chart, which creates its own set of issues. But then Mars, the Lagna Lord, is going to the original D1 chart, 6th house in the D12 chart. So which is also pointing to a kind of karma relating to health coming from the ancestors or from the parents, actually, which is one more thing that you can see. So there's one thing you can see, even though there is Jupiter's aspect upon Mars and Rahu, though there was doctors trying to help him out and all that, which is what that means also. And the other factors, as you correctly said, so like with Sun in Hasta, the nakshatra where Mercury gets exalted in D12 chart, 4,000 mother and all that, as you correctly said. Mars 11th house is the problem here in the D12 chart, though. Though Mars is Lagna of the D1 chart, the D12 chart is the ruling problematic house, which is the 6th house, and it's going into 11th also, creating its own set of problems. So you can clearly see the Lagna Lord of the D1 chart is ruling challenging house in the divisional chart. That particular divisional chart is that particular area of your life is going to create problems for you. That is one thing you can see here. So Mars is the ruler of 6th Lord and 11th Lord in the D12 chart, and that was the ascendant Lord. So his health is going to have a problem. Now, he already had a health problem from the D1 chart itself because Mars is the 6th Lord is also. Now, the Mars 6th Lordship got again repeated in this D12 chart, because of which again he had a problem. And of course, you can see Mercury related problem. Mercury has a connective tissue problem and all that. It's kind of built up here, Mercury being in Jyeshtha and all that also. Now, as you said also, is it possible that drugs were involved, alcohol was involved? Yeah, good chance Mars was. That was also adding to it. 9th house of father and 10th house of career with Venus. Let's see. Opposed to
But look
Sun,
at that Venus. It's like almost exactly exalted. Isn't
Correct,
that
yeah.
cool? In the 10th
Yeah.
house. I mean, that if that's not a
Yeah.
superstar, I don't know what is. That's a
Correct.
diva,
Yeah, so you could definitely see from this, at least from the D12 chart, definitely he's having some blessings of his ancestors of music and all that. So that kind of thing is very directly seen. Ketu Venus being exalted. Not only that, it is the 5th lord also of the chart, conjunct the 9th lord and conjunct the 9th lord Saturn. Though it is also disposed of Ketu in the chart also, which is also adding to it. So in general, I had another astrologer friend once remark, Mars being in Kritika, any planet being Kritika because the Agni is there might be more fiery kind of thing. There might be more this mantra chanting energy and all that there also. So modern day singers and so forth can actually have that Kritika energy very easily. That's also one more thing that's there. And as you finally remarked also, Moon being the 12th house also, mother's loss also is giving a clue with regard to his own condition also. Why usually they do say that this particular disease and so forth, you could say that it is having a thing with the life expectancy is actually impacted. But of course, nowadays technology is allowing, at least being aware of this and working on this is also equally important. So that kind of thing is also something I can say. Now, one thing here also is that usually one such I always say is that with Mars Rahu conjunction, there is always a need to do energetic cleansing in general. Some kind of cleansing thing anyway. Healing your ancestors is very important, which is clearly shown here actually. Mars Rahu conjunction of Mars impacting upon Rahu can sometimes show energetic energies that are challenging for the ancestors. Now, in general, all of our ancestors have their own issues. We kind of need to send healing energies towards them. Any kind of ancestral work is always recommended whenever there is a malefic planet conjunct Rahu Ketu. In fact, Sun Rahu Ketu or Moon Rahu Ketu conjunctions is always considered to be a problem with the ancestors actually. But in my opinion, you can also extend that to any malefics that are conjunct Rahu Ketu also. So that means that you have to do some healing work, you had to help out some ancestors and all that. You had to send some prayers towards them, send some energies, do any kind of ancestral healing work, have an altar for the ancestors, give them offerings, food offerings. There's one more thing which I recently learned about how you can burn a picture of your ancestor with like something they would need. That is another tradition they follow in in China and all that. They do this ancestral burning actually. You might have pictures of your ancestors with like a picture of like a big house or a big garden or big wealth and all that. Literally, at least your ancestors will be wealthy in a different world. That kind of thing. And you can see that Chinese ancestral offering is a big thing. You can buy all this thing. They burn all kind of offerings for the Chinese people burn all kind of things for the ancestors actually. So that kind of thing you can see. but yeah, what you said, definitely you can see the disease kind of problems are definitely repeating in the detailed chart. No doubt of that.
Sure. So the last chart I have for him is his D6. We have to look at that. And we see he's got Pisces Lagna. Saturn is the most important planet to assess in the D6 and the sixth house. Saturn is debilitated in Aries. In the second house, Amarika house, indicating health problems with the throat and the mouth. That can also be things you take in, not just your speech or your throat, larynx or something, but health problems with nutrition, Ashwini is the physicians to the gods, and indeed he has had a lot of doctors, some of which went on trial after his death to explain why he had so many pain prescriptions. Chronic pain is an indication of EDS and often gets misdiagnosed as fibromyalgia, which is a rheumatoid condition. Mars exactly conjunct the Lagna shows cardiac issues, migraines, hair loss, and uncontrollable emotions in Pisces. Especially it's young too. It's not even 1 degree, so it's kind of immature, right? Sun, Moon, Rahu, and Ketu are not assessed in this chart. Sixth house ruler is the Sun, which goes to the fourth house of the mother, another indication of inheriting EDS from her. And Neptune retrograde conjunct the Sun in the fourth indicates the lung problems he had, as well as drug addiction from this disease. So what do you see?
Yeah, no, definitely. Whatever you shared here is quite good, especially the highlight here being the Saturn being the 12th lord in the second house, getting debilitated and so forth. Even though there is the aspect of Jupiter and Mercury, so you can clearly see the impact of physicians upon his health also. So that also the debilitated Venus
And
is
11th
also.
lord too, 11th lord is a malefic.
That's correct. 11th lord will always create a karma also, no doubt about that. And of course, other factor is also the debilitated Venus here also, which is the 8th lord, and getting aspect of Mars and so forth. So you can see how his music kind of thing contributed to his health issues in a different way. That kind of thing you can see. And of course, the 6th lord is Sun in the D6 chart, getting aspect of Mars again. So there is even though it's aspect of Lagna lord happening, Mars is still a malefic. You can see how it was like health issue eventually had to come up his way and all that. So of course, now what they say is that when you have Rahu Ketu conjunct in this divisional chart, it's not really conjunction. You usually put Ketu in the opposite house from Rahu. It's just like a software error apparently. That's something that's what I was told. Now, Ketu being in Lagna, immediately you can see the ancestral kind of karma very quickly also. And if you carefully look at the degree also, it's very close to Lagna degree also. So all that you can see. So why the ancestral karma or the genetic karma got passed down to Elvis also the same time. Now all that also you can definitely see. And as you said also, 6th lord in the 4th house, the mother was the source of the health issue and all that. So that kind of thing also you could do. Now it is true, not many people look at Rahu, Ketu, Sun, Moon, but in my opinion, that is a research point. There might be some research validity when you begin to look at Sun, Moon. Perhaps you might get some clues in the D6, D30 chart and all that. So of course, many people don't look at it because they do say it's a higher divisional chart, and ideally you would want something in the more visible aspect. But in my opinion, it's a research point. It's valid from a research angle to look at those points also. Yeah.
Okay. So next we have Daniel Browning Smith. He is the rubber boy. He's the #1 contortionist in the Guinness Book of World Records. And this is just one picture of him. He's got a lot of crazy pretzel-y pictures. This is one that's easy to look at. Some of them, it was like, oh God, that looks so painful. So I don't have a time of birth. So we're using this moon chart. Moon in Hasta, ruled by Virgo. Hasta, ruled by the moon, the hand. Here we go. EDS, bendy hands, right? Pluto retrograde conjunct the moon. Pluto is the power of the small, like DNA, that he could have inherited from his mother again. Mars in his own sign of Aries, 8 places from the moon, conjunct Mercury and the sun, exalted, mega bendy. Yeah. 10th house of career ruler is Mercury. Connective tissue. Venus exalted in Pisces, opposed the moon. He probably makes a lot of money off of his hands or, his condition. We become freak sideshows. This is the problem, But at least he's getting some money. I hope that he's able to retire and take care of himself. Moon is at Mercury's exaltation degree and Venus's debilitation degree. More indication of wealth from his career. Neptune retrograde in Mars' sign of Scorpio, Jyotisha. He probably has had to take a lot of drugs for his condition. Not always illicit. It can indicate pharmaceutical drugs too. And then Saturn retrograde conjunct Rahu in the 12th in Purva Falguni. As he ages, he will get stiffer and worsen. And because of Purva Falguni, he probably is in the autism spectrum as well, especially in the 12th house. Ketu and Saturn sign of Aquarius, Purva Bhadrapada. He's here to break the patterns of a genetic disease. He is like a spokesperson for us because he's so famous. So he can, that's part of his dharma is to help break the pattern. So that's just stuff I saw right off the top of my head. Do you see extra?
These are they're excellent points, Katya. One thing I can definitely say, as you thoroughly mentioned, Moon and Hasta, the person who's having his skin is kind of to the hands and all that. So literally that kind of thing you can see. 8th house from Moon is a big tell. A lot of planets in the 8th house can also show the ability to transform your thing. Of course, it can be challenging earlier on, but then eventually he used it to his advantage actually. So that kind of thing you can see quite easily there actually. As definitely his 10th house of career is contortionist, because Mars in 8th house and all that is usually contortion kind of thing actually. That kind of thing you can see quite easily.
And the Mars Mercury, bending. A lot of people think of Mercury as just words, like Mars can bend the words of Mercury. But guess what? Mars can also bend the skin of Mercury too.
That's right. Yeah. So definitely if you're contortion, your skin should also bend along with your body, right? So that's a different thing. You need to have a skin that is supportive of that also. So definitely Mars, Mercury can be more bendy. Hypermobility can be a thing for these natives. For you, that can be a direct thing because you're definitely Mars is movement, motion, athletic movement. Mercury is a thing. So usually hypermobility is considered to be yogis, right? Yogis are actually hypermobile. Hypermobility is a thing for yogi actually. So that's one thing. But at least in yoga, the idea is that they do have this idea that your pain or your karma is stored in your joints actually. So the more bendy you are, the more you can open up your joints and so forth. At least that is helping you to release some of the karmas in your joints. So at least that's one idea there. But at least, but of course, the other things are different set of problems, like you said, other set of thing that comes and so forth. So that's the other thing. So of course, the more they say that if you're able to hold a yoga pose, you're able to still your mind in that yoga pose. And then if you're also able to still your breath in that yoga pose also, that is actually literally your karma is completely, that particular branch of karma is completely removed from you. That kind of thing is what the yogis do actually. In fact, there was a yogi online who was basically saying yoga masters basically, used to be that yoga masters would just master 2 or 3 yoga poses and that's it. So they attain enlightenment through that particular yoga pose, and that's what they would do. But then they focus a lot on stillness of mind within that yoga pose, stillness of breath also in the yoga pose was also something they focused on. So of course, I'm sure Daniel is excellent at has found a stillness of mind, this particular thing. One thing I would have definitely encouraged is to focus on the stillness of breath also. How long can you hold a particular breath? Or can you be relaxed to a point where you need not breathe in that yoga pose for a long time? That kind of thing is also very beneficial. But anyway, that is you can see is clearly, you can see Ashwini Nakshatra as being very prominent here. That is definitely not going to change regardless of the birth time. And that's the other thing also with nakshatras, many of the planets don't change the positions, quite easily. So Saturn, Rahu, and Purva Falguni. Saturn, Rahu is conjunct actually. So immediately you can see this, he's literally working out a lot of karmas through his contortion and all that. So that kind of thing you can easily see. It is true. Ketu linked with Saturn or Saturn linked with Rahu, there is a stiffness condition. There is a there is a condition of the bones that is being inherited. That kind of thing is also one more thing you see. At least the good thing is that definitely, usually with the Rahu Ketu also, a good practice is to look at how many houses away has the dispositors of those particular planets gone away. You can see a lot of Rahu, the sun is going 9 houses away from Rahu. So you can see that he's trying to become like an advocate for this condition and all that. He's becoming like, he's teaching about this condition, informing others. So 9th house kind of karma, dharma kind of thing. That is also one more quick technique actually to identify how well are you, is our unfulfilled desires actually playing out, is in a good fashion or not. So usually like when you have Rahu's Lord, Ketu, look at Ketu's disposal also. Ketu's disposal Saturn is going 7 houses away. So again, this public thing, public performance thing, all that kind of thing, something which he's carrying away from past life kind of thing. That was one more thing you can see. And of course, Moon Lagna does give you indications with regard to what you will feel emotionally as creating problems. So 100% 6th house, 8th house, 12th house planets can indicate some kind of karma on that front. So no doubt, definitely is having this kind of a thing. Usually Rahu Ketu nakshatras in general can, remember again, the point which I mentioned, a malefic in our Rahu Ketu nakshatra. So you can see Mars is in Ashwin nakshatra. So you can see why he had a problem with this karma of ancestors and the syndrome and all that. That's also one more thing. You can see that playing out actually. So malefic in certain nakshatras can create malefic karma, not only with regard to that particular house, malefic karma with regard to that particular nakshatra also. That's also one more thing just to be mindful of actually.
Wow. Yeah. What a chart, huh?
Yeah.
This just says it all. Yeah. Well, so I thought I just compiled a couple things as a last minute, you know, kind of like just how to treat people that have this, you know. It's considered an invisible disease. And so because it's invisible, medical gaslighting by doctors and others is common. So listen, don't gaslight. It's not all in our head. You know, if somebody's complaining about something, they're not just trying to get attention. They're not just trying to get drugs. You know, they're trying to get help. And so don't blow it off. You know, don't think that they're just making it up. Don't engage in ableism or discrimination of the disabled. Remember, the richest and smartest man in the world, Elon Musk, has autism. Okay. We have to remember that intelligence is measured in many different ways. And people, you know, sidestep, you know, a lot of problems and figure things out themselves and teach themselves, you know. And so the way people are taught in schools isn't always measuring intelligence. So we got to, you know, remember that. And, you know, I've had lots of teachers blow me off because I'm ADHD and dyslexic, right? But I have a very high IQ. So I figured out my own techniques of learning, you know, and it works for me. So you have to give these people space to figure out what works for them. Don't just force them into a certain, you know, a certain criteria for intelligence. Pain and fatigue are common, so please don't judge us for medicating. And there are all different ways of medicating. Some people actually do have to take prescription painkillers. For some people, it's what works, and they're not, you know, drug addicts just trying to get high. They're trying to relieve their pain. For me, I can't take any of that prescription stuff because it makes me really constipated and I don't like it. And it doesn't really work. It just makes me, like, again, it doesn't kill the pain. It just makes me not care about it, right? So I can't take that stuff. I like more natural, you know, homeopathic, plant-based painkillers. It just works better with my body. But again, don't judge. You know, you're not living in my body. You don't know what it's like. So let me just do what I need to do to, you know, get by. No 2 days are alike. And on the good days, we doubt ourselves. You know, you're having a good day. Well, gosh, do I really have this? You know, it's like, well, I got this. It's not going to get worse. No, there's no set pattern. I mean, it's all, there's so many factors influencing us, from solar flares to the weather, to astrological stuff, to emotional stress, all different things can trigger a flare up. And so to think that we can live, you know, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and do what everybody else does, and on the week, we can't do that. You know, we could have 3 days in a row that are good. And then that 4th day, we're in bed all day. You know, there's no pattern. It's really, so no consistency in flare-ups. This is the problem. There's no consistency. There's so many different factors causing flare-ups. And the only consistency is inconsistency, you know? So jobs, employment is difficult for a lot of people. They have to get disability, or they have to get jobs where they have more, they're in charge of their schedule. You know, they get their work done, but they get it in their own time. Be patient. No one wants to be this sick. Trust me. I don't want to be this sick. Yeah, I hate it. I want it to go away, but you know, I'm already impatient with myself. So, you know, I have to learn self-patience. And if people can just be patient with me, then it just smooths things out, you know. Everything will get done. Let's just, you know, work through it, you know. And observe closely. EDS is not as rare as we once thought. What did I see the other day? 1 in 1,000 people may have it, something like that. They just don't know. And there's no cure. So just managing symptoms and trying to minimize the flare-ups is what we do. You know, just, we've got our little toolkit of tricks that we have to, like for instance, you know, because of the heart issues and the racing heart, dehydration is a big problem. So getting a diagnosis means that if you need to go to the ER and get a bag of saline to get you hydrated, they know why, you know? And so a lot of people, we drink, I drink something's called Drip Drop. Some people use the Liquid IV brand, but it's an electrolyte drink mix that you add to your water, and just like Pedialyte, you know, it hydrates you very fast. And so I drink 1 packet of those a day because it's expensive. It's like $1 a packet, you know. So I buy, you know, a packet of 35, and that's, you know, $35 for the month. And I take 1 a day in my water. And I do 1 dose of collagen that helps my hair and my nails grow. I take my multivitamins. I take my antihistamines. I try, you know, I used to be big on the supplements, and it's not good for your liver or your kidneys to take that many supplements. So I've been trying to minimize the pills and focus more on like food and plant-based nutrition, and working on my colon, and just doing fasting. Fasting is amazing. Like just trying to eat very minimal during the day, and then have 1 meal at night, or have a meal in the morning, and have very minimal during the day, or something like that. So, you know, give your body a rest. You know, that's what fasting does. Your body can just go, oh, thank you, I get a vacation. But you know, this is just some of the tips that I have for people that are in the group that I see every day, just coming in crying with, you know, my spouse left me because, you know, I can't work, or I'm in bed all the time, and they don't understand, you know. My teacher told me I'm stupid because, you know, I can't do things like other people do. I mean, just on and on and on. And it's so sad. It makes me mad, to tell you the truth. Because like I said, nobody wants to be this sick, you know, we really don't. But we just have, you know, what I've discovered is that we just have to have this attitude of, we got it, you know, we got this, you know. And like, it's funny, he's called the Rubber Boy, and now they have these elastic, it's like a stretchy band that people wrap around their body in a way that holds them together. And the people that have it love it. They're like, Oh my God. I feel like somebody stitched me together like a rag doll, you know? I have to sleep with a pregnancy pill every night because I need to have lots of pills around me to support me so that my muscles can relax, you know? Otherwise, I'm just like, I'll wake up with a crick in my neck, or I can't relax unless I'm fully supported, you know? So like, just, you know, knowing about this is half the battle. So, and
Well,
that's,
one thing I
yep.
want to add, Katya, here is that, especially on the points when you mentioned about pain and all that, you know, one session I always encourage with the physical body thing, especially is to work on some energetic modalities in general. So I've seen people get, so of course, if it's a Rahu Ketu problem, the physical kind of medical treatment and all that will help you to a point. But then you also need to have some kind of energetic kind of ways to handle that. You need to make sure you're bringing in good energies regularly. So one thing I always encourage now in general, when you have any kind of health kind of diseases or you know, disease kind of problem, usually you are dealing with a strong fierce energy at the body level. That's one thing. In Ayurveda and all that, generally doctors do consider two aspects. Even in Chinese medicine also, you always consider the energetic aspect or the emotional aspect or the energetic aspect, the karma that became the source of this disease. That is one thing you always look at. So, for instance, if you have diabetes or diabetes kind of thing in the family, usually it affects the liver, and usually you see that in a chart with afflicted Jupiter and all that. Jaundice, for instance, and so forth. That usually shows that at some point knowledge sharing was not happening. And that's they say the reason why they say diabetes is in the family, because they carried some knowledge that had to be passed down, but that just did not get passed down the lineage and all that. So sometimes there's a karmic way to help out something. Now, usually when you volunteer and so forth, Saturn kind of problems are usually improved. Helping out with tutoring and all that, whatever, giving good advice kind of thing always helps out Jupiter energy. And Rahu Ketu is more, Rahu Ketu whenever it's coming into picture, you always need to do some energetic thing. Usually always encouraged to do some Ganesha practice and goddess Kali practice. Actually, some goddess Kali practice, something I always mantras for her, something I always encourage. Now, when you get into a Rahu Ketu thing, one more thing I always encourage is like in quite simple in the one of the energetic modalities I have a huge respect for is the Tai Chi and all that. So when you begin to have a routine of doing daily Tai Chi, that is something that can be much more easily done by elderly people. So now, of course, yoga, there are many yoga poses in yoga which can be friendly for the elderly people and all that. People are going through this and all that. So some simpler poses like the cobra pose, for instance, or horse pose or whatever, right? So dog pose, whatever you can do as is possible, they do help out actually. Cobra pose is very good for spine and all that. So definitely that helps out no matter what as you get older and all that. But then the other thing Tai Chi is a big thing in my opinion. Tai Chi not only will improve the energetic thing, also the energies that are sources for the flare-ups and certain bodies being having a problem. You can see that the energies will begin to calm down a lot. The other thing also, one of these techniques I came across and which is quite popular thing in the Chinese system is the inner smile technique actually. So inner smile technique is a technique in which you meditate, you send a smile to each of your main 5 organs. You just smile, you send that smile energy to make those organs happy. So, you send it to your lungs, you send it to your stomach, your liver and all that particular thing. And then, so that's a simpler, gentle way of like improving that energetic state of your body. So if whatever body part is actually having a problem, say you have a problem with your knee or something. So it's a simple thing when you do some, when you send some, you meditate for some time, the energy, then you put some positive energy thing, you direct it towards your knee, especially a positive smile kind of energy in which you're feeling happy, joyous, joyful and all that. So that is one thing. So when you begin to send those energies again and again and again, slowly the pain energy will begin to reduce. Now, there are certain very old prayers which I've seen that can work out also. So I had someone actually telling me all these old prayers, very old Vedic prayers, for instance, and so forth. Even doesn't matter what Vedic, need not be Vedic also, you can do Japanese prayers, you can do Hebrew prayers, doesn't matter. Some kind of prayer as a technique, those and when you build up the energy of that particular prayer, say, directing it to the body part is also sometimes very beneficial actually. Especially that's why this group healing things actually works. Group healing thing, 11 people saying prayers over you can be there. Now I'm not saying Bible prayers don't work, but Bible prayers have their own, history and all that. But then usually I would say that the older prayers, like very old systems and all that, those kind of prayers can work. The other thing also I encourage, let us be the final point today. I've seen that nowadays there is a popular thing called a Sri Vidya technique in which you actually do Sri Vidya kind of practices over a yantra and all that. So every day you're kind of invoking the goddess, chanting some mantras and all that. So there are many people who do it, of course, if you do that particular practice, for some cases, I've seen that is also an energetic modality that works, in which you are kind of doing this goddess practices over a particular yantra. So you're invoking that energy on a very strong basis in that way also. So that's also one more thing that can also, I can encourage. But yeah, it is good. What you shared is great actually. In fact, one big thing in occult science is that many times you see astrologers or any people in the healers, in fact, healers themselves have to go through their own journey of sort, and then they have to kind of go and share their knowledge and share their wisdom through that. So that's great. So I'm happy that you were able to share whatever you experienced so that others could be aware of that thing, Katya. So that's always good. So that is always a good thing. So that kind of thing that is always going to give you good results in the future and so forth also.
Yeah. And one more thing I'd like to share is I think it was about 2016, maybe. I was dancing a lot in Detroit and I had a really bad flare up. It went from my tooth here all the way down to my shoulder, down to my back, all the way down to my my broken toes, like this meridian. And I went and got acupuncture, and that finally stopped the pain. I mean, it was so bad. I would just lay in bed and just cry for hours because it was just, it's not a sharp pain. It's like this dull, throbbing ache. Like you've walked for miles and miles and miles, and oh, it's just awful. But the acupuncture really helped a lot. And so, people just need to find what works for them, and if we keep advocating for it, and then finally I think the doctors will come around, but it's going to take people talking about it, and also just observing, because it has to be in your family. That's the thing. So look around you. It's like, what do they say? The proverbial elephant in the middle of the room. It's the proverbial zebra in the middle of the room.
Yeah, definitely. I can say that for sure. Even if you are aware of even if you're distant, if you're not so close with your aunts or cousins or whatnot, just reaching out to them and understanding, is there anything genetic going on, by learning from them actually. Well, do they have any issues? So you begin to see, at least from a medical standpoint, that is always beneficial, just to have a link with family and maintain that kind of thing. Usually you'll see that more often than not, there's a genetic thing with most of the illnesses. Most of these same people of a particular generation is going to have that kind of karma and so forth. So in fact, the snake curse, for instance, right? They will say like, the grandchildren would get the curse of their grandfathers kind of thing going on. So it's a direct Rahu Ketu thing going on.
Well, and I've got some, of course, I've got some star seed ideas about where this comes from, which I'll tell you after we record.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't want to blow people's minds with too much information, so I'll just leave it there. But thank you so much, Santhip Ji. I just love your teaching. I just think you're the best. And you make things so clear and easy for people to understand. And of course, as always, if you are interested in a reading with Santhip, you can always email him. If you have a hard time finding that, just message me. I will get that. I don't want to say out loud, but we'll get you to the right place. Of course, I give readings as well. And I've got my Navagraha elixirs and bracelets for sale. Today I wore my Rahu and my Venus. And this is from Chandraganta, from the Navratri 9 Nights of the Goddess. And lots of stuff for you to explore over at HindustanAstrology.com. And as always, don't forget to like and to subscribe. And please check out my Patreon page as well. And we have a group going on now on Facebook where we're meeting once a week. It's now Sundays at 8 p.m. It's Cosmic Satsang. And we're just meeting and hanging out, taking a look at what's going on for the week, just chit-chatting. And then, you know, Brittany's going to lead us into a guided meditation and get us centered for the week. So if you're interested in that, I will put the link down below. But as always, thank you so much. And until next time, namaste.
Yeah.
Thank you.